Hello, everyone. Welcome to February's DBT lesson of the month. I'm continuing mindfulness, specifically the what skills, and the what skills that are what you actually do when you practice mindfulness. There are 3 of them: observing, describing, and participating. So I'm going to go in depth about those 3 skills today. Last month I gave you my personal definition of mindfulness and why it is so important, how it can help you gain mental clarity and also help with a myriad of mental health symptoms. So as I said, this month is going over the what skills, and the rest of this year is going to follow along the same order as if it was a DBT skills group, in which case it's usually about 24 weeks. It's about 6 weeks per pillar or module of dialectical behavioral therapy. The first one's mindfulness. That first pillar or module is mindfulness. That second is distress tolerance. That third is emotional regulation. And that fourth is interpersonal effectiveness. And so that's the order I'm going to go in this year, each month for the hub. I'm going to break them into quarters because I really like numbers and symmetry and keeping things even and all that. Yes, it might have been a coping skill as a result of trauma from childhood, but you know what? It's helped me be organized, and it helps my anxiety. So I broke down this year into quarters, and each quarter is going to be one of those pillars or modules. So our first quarter is mindfulness. So this month of February, I'm continuing mindfulness. With the what skills, we'll go over the how skills in March. Then in quarter 2, we're going to go over distress tolerance. Then in Q3, we're going to go over emotion regulation. Then in Q4, we will wrap it up with the interpersonal effectiveness skills. So yeah, that's just as if it was a typical DBT skills group. That's how it would be, except it would be 6 weeks per module. But I'm going to break it down over the course of 3 months. So thank you again for tuning in to this month. You might remember I mentioned wise mind last month. One of the goals of mindfulness is to get into wise mind. And that's because we so often can find ourselves overwhelmed by either your emotions, your emotion mind, or being stuck in reason mind and just being so consumed by logic and practicality that there's no room to access emotions. So wise mind is finding that inner wisdom that we all have. Everyone has the ability to access it. Everyone has the capacity for this inner wisdom. For some it's hard to access it, and for some it's easy. And so my hope is that I can go over some of these skills that can maybe make it easier for you if it's difficult. For myself, it certainly is. And that is why I'm so passionate about mindfulness, because it has helped me tremendously. So I just want to give you some brief statements about wise mind that can help you understand it a little bit more. One is that it's a synthesis of opposites, emotion mind and reasonable mind being opposite of each other. And it is very hard to overcome emotion mind with a reasonable mind. And you also cannot create emotions with reasonableness. So you have to go within and bring them together. So as I said before, everyone has wise mind. It just takes practice. Wise mind is sometimes experienced as a particular place in the body. For example, the center in your belly, the center of your head, in between your eyes. Some examples. It isn't always easy to access wise mind, and that is okay. Wise mind is the part of each person that can know and experience the truth. Wise mind is similar to intuition. Wise mind is free of conflict. Wise mind depends on integrating ways of knowing. And lastly, finding wise mind consistently can take a lot of practice. But that's why, again, I love meditation. Meditation is what helps you practice this. Even for a few minutes, this can help you. Now, I'm sure when you were growing up, you heard that phrase, practice makes perfect. Well, I'm trying to outlaw that. I don't want to subscribe to that. because the goal here is not perfection. My favorite motto, personally, that I use with myself and my clients is progress, not perfection. And so I feel that practice makes progress. That's how I like to look at it. So I hope that resonates with you. Okay, so let's get into these what skills. 3 what skills: observe, describe, participate. And so observe, of course. What are you doing? You're observing. It's the opposite of multitasking because you're just observing one thing at a time. You're just looking, observing, becoming aware of what you see. So why is this important? Why do we observe? Well, we observe to see what is there. We observe to get information into our brain so that we can make changes if we need to. I want to quickly ask you to think about your own tendencies to avoid reality and to avoid seeing what's really there and what's in front of you. One of my own personal tendencies that I probably overuse to avoid reality, definitely consuming media, whether it is entertainment, social media, listening to podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is, on my phone, on some sort of screen. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just a matter of like how often and how much is it taking up your daily routine, your daily activities. And there are times when I'm mindful of it and I'm like, you need to put your phone down. And there are times where I'm not and I don't care. And that's probably not great. But I'm certainly aware of it. And that's the biggest thing. If you can at least look within and observe, you can look at your own tendencies and patterns. And again, we got to get that information into our brain so that we can make the changes that we need, that we so desire. So what are we observing? Feelings, thoughts, urges, physical sensations, behaviors, information from our senses. We're observing our environment. What do I see? Again, hear, smell, touch, all of that. And the goal is to integrate your experience. And I realize this can be difficult for folks who have experienced trauma and still experience symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And I do want to hold space for that because I think being trauma-informed is extremely important. And these DBT skills really were designed to help with trauma as well. It's a matter of if you can stay in your window of tolerance while you're practicing these skills. And if you get out of that window of tolerance, you get too overwhelmed with your senses, you're emotionally flooded, then yeah, you have to do whatever it is that you need to do to get yourself back into that window of tolerance in order to continue practicing these skills, continue observing, and not being overwhelmed by any past trauma symptoms. And so I do realize and recognize, acknowledge, and appreciate that that is difficult when you have symptoms of trauma that are still so present. If you are able to stay in that window of tolerance, then we can describe what skill number 2? Describe. We're describing what we just experienced, what we just observed. We're putting those experiences into words. Why are words so important? Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, words hurt. As someone who experienced emotional, psychological trauma, abuse, neglect, words hurt. So anyways, words make it clear for you and others what you've observed, what was not observed, so you make sense of your reality, right? And then, of course, third one is participate, which is entering wholly into an activity, making a mindful choice about what you're doing, and practicing your skills until they are a part of you. Immersing yourself, being one with your experience, especially non-judgmentally. That is so key. And I'm going to go more in depth about that next month when I talk about the how skills. So that is sort of my brief overview on observe, describe, and participate. So now I just want to give some quick exercises that you can do to practice observing, describing, and participating. Observing by coming back to your senses. So really anytime you can access your senses, you're going to be practicing observing. So observe with your eyes. You can lie on the ground and just watch the clouds in the sky. You can notice facial expressions and movements of somebody else, but refrain from labeling them. Now observe sounds. right now you can listen to the sound of my voice. And when I'm not speaking, what else do you hear? Now myself, I'm looking out my window right now, and since it is rather windy, I can definitely hear the sound of the wind, even outside. Observe any smells around you. When you breathe in, do you smell anything? Now observe taste. Observe an urge to do something. Observe any sensations of touch on your skin. You can also observe your breath. Any breathing exercises are a great opportunity to observe and focus on your breath. Now, something that I don't enjoy or find difficult, observing the thoughts coming in and out of your mind. Sensing your mind is one of the more difficult things, I think, because of the trauma. Past trauma makes it hard to sit and observe your mind and your thoughts. But it is okay to have difficulty with that. Practice makes progress, and we are looking for progress, not perfection. So one practice exercise that we can do to kind of sense our mind, I'm going to say a word and you're going to observe the first word that comes into your mind in response to this word, okay? So the first one is down. The second word is cat. The third word is square. And the fourth word is small. So if you're able to describe which word you just observed in your mind that came first when I said those words, that's a way to practice sensing what's in your mind. Very simple exercises just make it easier for you to just gain control of your mind, of your thoughts, and that is practicing mindfulness. So those are some ways that you can practice observing. Once you've observed, then you can practice describing, putting into words what you just observed. So now if you go back to that first example, lying on the ground and watching the clouds in the sky, you follow it up with describing the patterns that you see, comparing it to any shapes or sizes that you recognize that are familiar. You can then describe your feelings as they arise within you. For example, a feeling of anger is arising within me, or a feeling of joy is arising within me. You can also practice describing your own breath. Again, make it as simple as you possibly can. When you're inhaling, you can say, I am inhaling my breath. And you can also count your breaths. That's another way of describing. And the final one is participating. Participating, once again, immersing yourself wholly into an activity. So any participating exercise is, well, movement, any mindful movement, dancing, singing along to music, any kind of mindful movement, whether it's walking, yoga, playing a sport, playing an activity, any of those examples are participating. Just letting yourself become one with that experience. It's definitely important to be non-judgmental about participating in that experience. And of course, I will go more in depth about why that's important and how we can be non-judgmental next month. And so I appreciate you listening. And now at the end of this, you might be wondering, how do I know when to observe, when to describe, or when to participate? And really, the best way to do that is to just step back from an activity and kind of decide what is it that you need in that moment. If you don't know how to do something, or if you feel like you're making errors and mistakes, I think it's kind of a good rule of thumb per se, or a good method perhaps, to try to just go in order of observe, describe, and participate. Go back to your observations and can you describe what you see? And then once you describe what you see, does that help? Does that help guide you in deciding what activity to participate and how to participate in next? It's also recommended to do the one that you find most difficult. For example, some folks participate all the time. That's kind of what I experience, what I do myself. And I think why that tendency to escape reality, to consume some sort of media on a screen, that all feels like I'm still like doing something, or at least distracting my mind and my brain. That to me is participating and not necessarily observing or describing. And I do feel like I experience that. But then at the same time, sometimes I do have trouble with participating if it comes to social activities. Sometimes I get social anxiety. And that fear of failure or fear of judgment gets in the way from participating in an activity. So it really just depends on maybe what side of the wise mind you're in, and whether that is preventing you from either doing something or sitting back and observing your own mind, being mindful. So the more you can just pause and just be with your own thoughts, feelings, senses, that is going to be where you're going to find the answer the most. That's where you're going to get clarity, and you're going to find that solution that works best for you. So once again, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And I hope you'll join me next month, where I talk about the how skills of mindfulness. Until then, stay kind to yourself.